You've only gone and downloaded a multiplesources.net podcast. For more episodes of this show and a bunch of other content covering everything from NBA teams to professional wrestling, visit multiplesources.net. Multiplesources.net. But wait! Act now and you too could join multiplesources.net. Yeah, we're looking for people to do their own podcasts about different NBA teams. We're looking for blog authors, video highlight creators, basically anything you can think of to write about sports. You can kind of write or create to your heart's content. So if you want to help us and join this up-and-coming independent blog and podcast network monster, go to multiplesources.net. I'll stick something in the sidebar that says join us or something equally unfunny, so go and click on that. Join us.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to It's Always Sunny in Phoenix, a weekly podcast where we keep you up to date on everything Phoenix Suns basketball. The season is finally over. It was a tough one for all of us Suns fans, as the team ended up 23-59 on the year, missing the playoffs for the 6th straight season. Mitch couldn't make it today, but we do have some recorded clips from him, but it's just me, Charlie, and David here today. What's going on, David?
We didn't get 60 losses, so I think that's a win.
Wouldn't that just have been terrible if it were only 22-60?
Instead, we're 23-59. We're just that much better than 22-60. So it's been a rough season.
We're gonna absolutely. So today we'll briefly talk about the last 2 games of the season, and then talk about the front court of our Suns. If you missed last episode, we talked about the back court and how they performed this season. So we'll do the same with the forwards and centers later after these recaps. And before we get started, next week the podcast will be a full season review for the Suns and our full season awards for the Suns, and we'll throw in some fun NBA categories too.
I'm so excited.
Oh yeah, this will be entertaining, at least for us. Hopefully you listeners too. So if you want to hear all of our opinions on this season, be sure to tune in next week. All right, and we're going to get into the Kings game from last week. We're going to go to Mitch, but first I have a one-sentence recap. Do we really need 2 Currys in the Western Conference?
The answer is no.
No, I don't want to see him get nearly as good as his brother and then still be pestering us in the Western Conference. All right, let's move on to Mitch's clip here.
Hi, everyone. This is Mitch. I'm out of town this weekend for a wedding, so I'm not on the podcast with Charlie and David, but I'm sure they're holding down our tight ship that we run. So I'm going to recap the Kings-Suns game back on Monday the 11th. It was a 105-101 loss, our 59th loss of the season. Seth Curry had a great game. He had 20 points, 15 assists, 3 rebounds, 3 steals, and just an all-around great game. He looked like his brother at times. He was really impressive. And then Costa Koufos, he also had a pretty good game. 19 points, 8 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals, 2 blocks. And then Rudy Gay, 15 points, 6 rebounds, 2 steals, 4 blocks. He played pretty well. The Suns had some pretty good production from Mirza. He had 26 points. He hit 4 threes. He had 3 rebounds, an assist, 2 steals. And then Booker put up 22. He also had 4 rebounds, 4 assists, a steal, a block. And then PJ had another double-double. That was pretty nice, 15 points, 10 rebounds. John Lure had a double-double, 12 points, 10 rebounds for him. And Alex Len had a double-double with 16 points and 10 rebounds. This one was just, it was kind of a weird game. The Suns were a little bit slow in the first and third quarters, but it's okay. What's one more loss on this season? And then the Clippers game on Wednesday the 13th. I'll just talk about that really quick because that was the last game. I'll give my one-sentence recap, and that's going to be, after 59 losses, it's finally over. It's also good to end on a win, I suppose. And yeah, the Clippers were without a lot of guys, so whatever. I have also been informed that David and I tied for the win in the trivia. We'll see how we settle that, but I'm looking forward to whatever that is.
Okay, then for the final game of the season, we took on the Clippers, like Mitch just talked about. The Clippers rested all of their starters, had some pretty interesting lineups out there. David, you covered this one. What did you think?
Yeah, so for this game, we were playing basically the Clippers bench. Their starting lineup was Austin Rivers. They had Luke Mbah-a-Moute, Paul Pierce, Cole Aldrich. Just, it wasn't very much that much going on their end. It was their bench. That bench is pretty decent. They beat Utah earlier in the last couple of weeks. They're able to beat Utah, so a decent bench, kind of. But it's one of those. This game was on the same night as Kobe's last game, as well as Golden State's last game. And if you look at the ratings for those, there probably wasn't a whole lot of people watching the Suns and Clippers. That being said, percentage-wise, Clippers, once again, this is, I think, the third game in a row that I've recapped where the other team has shot better percentages from the field than us. So the Clippers shot 44.8%, 29%, and 83.3%. Respective from the field, 3-point line, and free throw. We shot 45.5%, 26.9%, and 77.3% from field, 3-point, free throw. But the big thing is that they shot 10 less attempted 10 less free throws, and we out-rebounded them 58-40, which if you look at some of the lineups they were going out with, where they had Jeff Green playing center, we had size on them. And we were able to out-rebound them. We had 18 more rebounds than them. And we were able to take a win on the final game of the season, 114-105. Mirza was the leading scorer of the game with 22 points, and he had 9 rebounds. It was his 4th game in a row with 20 points off the bench. The Suns' team record is EJ, Eddie Johnson, with 13 games in a row, I think it is. So if Mirza's still on the team, he can continue that streak into next season and maybe give Eddie a little bit of a run for his money. John Lure notched his 10th double-double of the season. He had 16 points and 14 rebounds. He went 7 of 8 from the field in 20 and a half minutes, and was able to get 2 steals and a block. I love John Lure, love Johnny Badger. I'm hoping that we're able to bring him back next year because I think he's a pretty good energy guy off the bench, especially when he gets consistent minutes. I think the last guy from the Suns that deserves a little bit of due is Alan Williams.
Big Sauce.
Big Sauce had a good chance and a lot of minutes this game, and he was able to get his first double-double of his career in just his 10th game. He had 14 points and 12 rebounds against, as I said, in lineups where Jeff Green is playing center, he was really able to get those rebounds. And I think he has given the Suns a little bit of a good look, and I think that he deserves a chance of maybe being that deep guy on the bench, not only for his celebrations, but also because he looked pretty good against some other reserves, and he's a little undersized, but he seems pretty strong. So that's basically all I got. As you said, we finished the season 23-59, and we're gonna. I think we're looking good for next season. This season was very injury prone. We lost Eric Bledsoe and everything, and I think that if the second half of the season has shown anything, where some of the young guys have really turned it on, I think we're going to be looking pretty good when we're at full health.
Yeah, for sure. And one quick note about Big Sauce. We'll talk more about him later, too. But he had a few really nice blocks in this Clippers game.
He did. I forgot to mention he had 3, I think.
Was it? And then Aaron Baines twice at the rim on dunk attempts.
Yep.
I mean, get out of here.
Very strong blocks. It was pretty nice to watch.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, and then I'll throw in a 1-sentence recap, more of an end of the season recap. Unlike the Suns season, and whose line is it anyways, I'm excited to watch some basketball where the points do actually matter.
Yes.
I'm ready for some playoff ball.
I am very ready for playoff ball.
I'll see how much I can enjoy. I think I know this opening round's always fun to watch, but when some of my lesser favorite teams get in there and it looks like they're going to make a run, I get a little angry, a little butthurt.
I feel that. I'm already starting to look into the hourglass about some of the teams playing in this first round. And I mean, I told you there are a couple of teams that I'm hoping that just lose, that probably won't, but that'll get me a little fidgety as the postseason goes on.
For sure. Well, I'm absolutely ready to be done reviewing games this season. It was fun while it lasted, but ready to talk some off-season, talk about these front court players tonight, and then ready to do it again next year with a healthy team.
Yes, sir.
All right, so that does it for the reviews, and let's get into talking about all of the forwards and centers on this roster and what each one of them brought to the team this season. And then maybe we'll share some opinions on what we think their roles on the team or not on the team will be next year. And as the host of tonight's show, I've decided that I'm not going to talk about Markieff Morris, but if David wants to, he's obviously free to do so. So we have another pre-recorded clip from Mitch here, so let's hear what he thinks first of all.
And then now I'm going to talk about my front court thoughts for the next season. I am a big fan of Alex Len. I've always liked him, and after this season, I'm really impressed with what he can do, and I'm hoping he can have an even bigger year next year. So really exciting things with Len. Tyson Chandler is still here, and he's got a couple years on his big contract. I mean, I would kind of hope that it would be possible to move him. He's a great veteran presence, but it's really, I think it's time for Len to start. And with Chandler here, I don't know if that's going to happen. Maybe every now and then, but Chandler he's a guy who's going to want to start, I'm sure. So, Chandler's he's still got some in the tank, but I'd rather be able to continue developing our young core. Unless Chandler can help lure in some free agents like he was brought in to do in the first place, I don't really see exactly where he fits with the team, but we'll see. There'll be a lot more on that we'll be able to talk about after the draft and after if we make some moves in free agency here. So yeah, I'd hope Len would be able to start at center. I really, really, really hope that Mirza can stay around. He was a huge boost to us this season. He's one of my favorite players. It'd be great to have him around. He's great off the bench shooting those threes, and he really progressed with his non-3-point shooting, working in the paint. he had some pretty nice dunks in the game against the Kings. He finished an alley-oop, which I didn't think I would ever see. So that was pretty exciting, but he's come a long way this season for sure. Then another guy is John Lure, and Lure has been very hard to evaluate because of his inconsistent minutes. He had some injury problems. When Earl Watson came in as interim, his minutes were all over the place. So it's really hard to say what to think about Lure. We got him by trading our second round pick last year, so we got him relatively cheaply. I think he's a good player, but again, he's another guy that I like him, but I'm not sure how he's gonna fit in, especially if we draft a guy kind of like him, another stretch four. But I'm not quite sure how that will work out yet. And then I think the big thing to highlight here is Len. Hopefully he can start at center, and I'm hoping that we can draft a power forward, whether it be Domantas Sabonis or not. I'll put my bias aside here, and even without it, I still feel like we need someone at that 4 spot, and I think that will fill a nice role. It would be really great to see Len and a rookie start at the 4 and 5. And then at the 3, there's TJ Warren, who I was really excited about at the beginning of the season, and he had flashes of greatness, but he just had such an unfortunate injury. But I'm really excited to see him back on the court. And then we'll see if PJ stays around. He could be possibly involved in a trade if we make one this offseason. PJ really hustled this year, played great defense. He stepped up his offense in the last couple games. So he's a great guy to have around for sure, but I'm not quite sure what his future will be, and I'd really like to see TJ Warren start too. I think, an ideal starting lineup for me would be Bledsoe, Booker, Warren, Len, and hopefully a young guy playing the 4 with all kinds of potential. I think that'd be really fun to see starting next season, but we'll see. Anyway, hope you enjoy the rest of this episode, and I'll turn it back over to Charlie and David.
All right, and Mitch loves Len, so let's talk about Len first. 23 minutes per game this season, 9 points, 7.5 boards, a little less than a block. The thing that really stands out to me are those 78 games. It was nice to see him stay relatively healthy throughout the whole season, and even changing up his game a little bit to work with Chandler towards the end of the year. David, what do you think about the Big A?
I enjoyed watching Alex Len this season, getting up some of those high point totals as the season went on. I'm going to take a little bit of a different approach than Mitch did. I do like him, and I think that he is going to be pretty good, or at least an average, above average NBA center. That being said, there are a couple worries that I have. One being his strength. And he's still getting better at it, of course, but there are still times where he's longer, he's all of that against guys, but they're able to kind of enforce their own will on him. And his block total towards the end of the season, I'm not entirely sure where he started. I'm not sure where that has gone. And I think when he started, he had around 1 or 2 blocks. But that's something that'll get better as he keeps on playing, and he should be able to start bulking up more. I was very worried. I'm still a little worried about his health, but he played through most of the games. Then when he didn't have that many minutes, it was mainly because of fouls that he needs to get better at. But a big flag that I'm a little nervous about is his shooting percentage. He shot 42% from the field during the season, which isn't something that you necessarily want for a big man. You want him shooting less jump shots and more around the rim. You want him getting somewhere in the 55 to 60 range, really, when it comes to percentages. He shot 42%. He started getting a lot of high usage and putting up a lot of shots. I think that he will get better, but I think that's still something that you have to look at. The percentages will get better. As I said, 42%, 42.3%. I think those will get better with less usage, but he definitely needs to start working more around the rim and stop falling in love with the jump shot, which I think towards the end of the season, he was trying to use the jump shot to get into a rhythm. But I'm a little nervous that he might just be a guy that just falls in love with that jump shot a little too much. That being said, I still really enjoy Alex. I like him on the team. I know we'll talk about roles a little bit later, so I won't necessarily say what I think he should be doing, but he was able to win some games for us and put up some pretty big numbers on a relatively bad team.
Yeah, for sure. And one thing that I think about Len's shooting percentage and kind of falling in love with that elbow, maybe even a little deeper than the elbow, but he was running that high post a lot with Chandler. And it seems to me like Len's definitely the man to put up at the high post in that situation. So, maybe I hope he's not in love with it, like you said. Being 7'1", he's still a little thin compared to a lot of guys and doesn't have the strength a lot of those big guys have. It would be easy for him to try to stay out there a little more, but maybe next year we won't be running this twin tower lineup and Len will be able to run that post a lot more. Plus, at one point of the season, he was our number one option on offense, so he was getting a lot of touches, and I don't see him as a number one option on a team going on in the future, but maybe Watson just wanted to get a little fire behind him and give him a shot to see what he could really do for the future of his career.
Yeah, and as I said, I like Len. I'm not trying to knock him that much. I'm just saying things that make me a little bit nervous. He definitely worked a lot out of the high post with Chandler, which I thought was good, and I think that he can be a good high-low post player in general and can start getting up there and working at that. I mean, he was taking a lot of free throws and was on some smaller guys that he was really able to put up. Most of the time when he was on a smaller guy, he was able to really go at him, but there were other times where it seemed like that smaller guy kind of got in his head, where he would put up bad shots just because he was taller. So, those are just other things. I think that in that high post as a, third, fourth option, I think he's going to be fine. But he's definitely not a first option. And I think that when you look at the just raw numbers when it comes to points in the second half of the season and not rebounds as much, but points, you got to remember that he's basically a second option to Devin, or a 1B option, however you want to say it, and that's kind of the reason why he was getting so many point totals a lot of the time.
Absolutely. So, last thing about Len, the one thing that really sticks out for me, I mentioned this earlier, but those 78 games. Let's hope Len can stay healthy next season, and man, if Len could play a full 82-game season, that would make me feel really good.
Yeah, agreed.
And him too, probably. But
Definitely.
Hey, let's talk about the other center on the roster, Tyson Chandler. He played in 66 games for us. Little over 7 points, almost 9 rebounds, and 0.7 blocks per game. Quite a big change towards the end of the year running Chandler and Len together. I wonder how much Chandler really liked that. But as a newcomer to the Suns, I think he was helpful as a mentor to the guys, for one thing, and also he could put together those nights where he's shooting 85% from the floor, grabbing 20 boards. He's a true big man, He's been doing his craft for a long time, and it really shows that he can make a difference in games. And, I'd like to see his block total a little higher. But that's another thing, that Twin Tower lineup, that kind of deterred some guys to bringing it to the rim a little bit. So maybe that's why those numbers are a little low for him and Len. But what do you think, David?
I have been a Tyson Chandler fan for a couple of years. I know that he's getting older. I know the contract was a little bad, but that's kind of a whole bigger picture thing. He had a rough season. He averaged 7.2 points and was on pretty low minutes. I think that's the main thing with the blocks not being so high, is that he played a few minutes. It was only around 20, I think, mainly throughout most of the season.
Sure.
But he had some injury issues, I think, and that really showed, and I think that's why he really lost for quite a while a lot of that jumping and athleticism. That isn't necessarily going to always be there, but I think that with an off-season arrest, you can probably get a little bit of that jump back with everything going on and get a little bit healthier. I still think he was pretty productive most of the time when he played, especially towards the end of the season, where he kind of really got back into it and started getting those points, and against kind of worse teams, but some decent big men he was able to get those points and rebounds against. But I think that he will be back. I don't think that we move him, and I think there's two reasons for that. I think that we make sure that we have another go with a healthy lineup with him as center, and I think that it's also a part of showing loyalty to our players, that we're not just going to try and move him just because we're jumping the gun, especially after the Dragic and Markieff scenarios, where they were bad-mouthing the organization and talking about how negative the organization is. So I think that he's around at least for that too. But I'm not going to complain about this season for Tyson. I would like for him to have been a little healthier, to have played in a few more games. But he played in around what he's played his career in the last few years. He played 75 games in Dallas last year, 55 and 66 and 62 the 3 years before that. So it's around those same, but I think with a little bit, if he was a little bit healthier, his numbers would have been up, and probably his minutes up a little bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was really excited when we brought him in. I thought he was the first true veteran center that the Suns have had in a while, probably since Shaq, if you want to call him that. But I was just happy for the team to have that sort of presence down low and in the locker room. But I think Tyson should be the starter next season, personally. I think Len would be doing very well off the bench next year. But we'll get into more of that later. Let's hit up the workhorse. PJ Tucker didn't miss a game this season. Held it down at small forward all year. 8 points per game, a little over 6 rebounds, and a little over 2 assists. And those stats really don't speak to PJ Tucker. And as Suns fans, we all know that he's kind of like the offensive lineman on the team. Like, the football team can't win without a good offensive line, but they never get any publicity or love. But that's our PJ Tucker. He is a beast, plain and simple. And this last quarter of the season, he turned it on offensively, which it's a little surprising, but you can see it. He can hit those threes. He can get to the rim. We mentioned earlier in the season that we did not feel comfortable with PJ running the fast break. And these last few games, he's been looking good. He looks confident with the ball. He knows how to pass. He's had some nice assist numbers this year. What do you think, David?
Yeah, his playmaking in the last the last little bit of the season has greatly improved. It's not something that I would have been very comfortable with, but you saw him more and more kind of playing a little bit of point here and there, kind of sharing it with Devin, especially when Knight went back out. But and I think that's good for his game. He was no longer kind of asked to be just a spot up in the corner guy as a zero. He started being able to take advantage of the worst defensive matchup. He's always kind of pulled the worst defender just because he's a zero on offense, basically. But he kind of started to take advantage of that. He shot a little under on his percentages this year than he has in the last few seasons. He shot 33%, whereas his average, he's 34.9 from 3-point. And he averaged for field goal percentage 41, where he normally averages about 43.6. But he is right at about his point total for his average over his career. But even though that's a little under what he did the last 2 years. You can't blame too much of that though on him. It was mainly the team, but he's that energy guy. He is the fierce competitor. Everyone talks about Draymond Green on the Warriors and how he kind of is the alpha dog and he's kind of their heart and all that. PJ Tucker's that to us. He is our team's heart. He is our lead. He's our mouth, basically. And I think that showed, especially as the season came winding down, that he was still that guy, and he wanted everyone to remember that he was that guy.
Yeah, I love having PJ in our corner. I'd hate to have to watch Devin Booker be guarded by PJ Tucker someday.
Yeah, that'd be bad. I would not be okay with that.
That would just be tough. Let's not think about that right now.
I'm pushing it out of my mind.
Let's move. Yep. All right, let's move on to the other prominent small forward on the roster, TJ Warren. Warren played in 47 games this season, and it seems like a lot less to me. He was going about 23 minutes per game and scoring 11 points per game and 3 rebounds per game. But the big improvement for TJ this season was he was shooting 40% from behind the 3-point line, which those numbers have gone up each year in his career, but seeing that 40%, that's pretty nice. And he was taking more this year too. So, man, I really miss Warren, and he would have been a great guy to watch thrive in this season, where after we lost Bledsoe, Warren really could have become the big scorer on the team along with Booker. What do you think? How much do you miss him? What do you think about TJ?
Yeah, I was really excited for TJ this year, and whatever nickname you want to call him, I really enjoy watching his game. He's got a little bit of that old small forward game, but he really brought it up to a little bit more modern this year. And as you said, he shot 40% from 3, but while keeping at 50% from the field in general. His consistency is something that's going to keep on improving. He would have had a chance to start getting a little bit more consistent with consistent minutes and with the injuries that we had this year. Unfortunately, he had his own injury, and I think that a lot of his totals would have been very... I think I'm trying to say how... I think that he basically would have been, instead of Alex Len having to kind of shoulder a lot, I think it would have been Booker and TJ a lot. And I think that would have been very fun to watch. I'm a little nervous that maybe he can't stay healthy. But I think that he's going to... I think that... that's just in the back of my head whenever someone gets hurt. I think that he's going to be fine. I am very excited to see him playing next year alongside Booker, alongside when Bledsoe gets back, alongside Len and Tyson. I think that if we go back, and I know earlier in the season I said that I think that we needed to put the ball in TJ's hands and have set plays for him. I think if we keep on working with that, whoever is hired as the coach and gets that, as maybe when he's on the second unit, to start getting him into kind of that idea of him having the ball, working with some set plays, I think he's going to continue to improve. And I'm excited to see him next year.
Yeah, I could see Warren putting up something like 15 points per game next year. It'd really be nice to see those rebounds come up a little bit, though. He's 6'8". That's great size for a small forward, and can be played at the 4, and if we're going small ball, or he can hang with some power forwards in general. But I'm just really excited about that. Him and Booker in the starting lineup, just two young dudes that can fill it up. That would be exciting. They could be the two of the best scorers in the league in their career, I hope.
Yeah, and of course, what's so great about TJ is his efficiency. He knows how to score, and he knows how to do it at a high percentage, which is something that we really missed as the season went on, and I'm going to look forward to next year. Also, I have a question for you. Do you think that instead of doing the Twin Tower lineup, if TJ was healthy, we would have just gone small instead? Mostly?
So, you'd say something like Knight or Price, Booker, PJ, TJ, and then a center?
Correct. Either Tyson or Len, either one.
I think that would have been a more likely option. I do.
Yeah.
And that would have been so much more fun to watch.
Yeah, I agree. I've kind of thought of that with both those guys healthy, I think that we would have gone to that a little bit more. And it would have spaced a little bit more. We wouldn't have beaten people on the boards as much, but it would have been a lot more of a classic Suns feel on the offensive end, I think.
Yeah, you could really get up and down the court with a lineup like that compared to Chandler and Len lumbering down after pulling down a rebound.
Definitely.
Just something that us Phoenix fans are not used to seeing. But I think Watson did what he had to do to get through the season, and it was a different approach than what we're used to, but he made do with what he had.
Yeah. In a season with so many injuries, you can't knock him for doing what you have to do, basically.
Yep. And another reason why he did that was to save Mirza Teletovic from having to start, I think. Let's talk about Mirza a little bit. He played in 79 games for us, so he had a really nice, healthy season. Averaged 12.2 points per game, almost 4 rebounds, and he shot 39% from downtown. And like we've talked about before, he broke that record for most three-pointers from off the bench in NBA history. So Mirza was a pleasure to watch this year. I really didn't expect him to be this good of a shooter, but man, I can watch him throw him up all night. And Eddie Johnson gives him a tough time about he even nicknamed him No Hesitation.
Yep.
Because he does not hesitate before he shoots the ball, and with a stroke like that, you can't blame him. It feels like it's going in when it leaves Mirza's hands. And, you know, he's 6'9", and he even ran a little small forward for us this year, which is pretty interesting. And he's not just a three-point shooter. He can put the ball on the court, get to the rim a little bit. He picked up quite a few fouls towards the end of the year when he started taking advantage of that, I noticed. What do you think, David?
All right, so Mirza, I enjoy him. If he wasn't on the bench and if he was starting, our bench would have been awful.
Oh, yeah.
We would have basically had as our scoring option off the bench towards the end of the year as John Lure. And as we had that most of the time, that would be it. Instead of John Lure and Mirza, we would have had John Lure. So I'm glad that we kept him on the bench because we needed something at times, especially if TJ would have been healthy and say we stick with the Twin Towers, TJ would have been probably the main scorer off the bench. But Mirza was that guy instead. Really turned it on. Really was pretty clutch for us. Had a couple of game winners that were pretty awesome. And I just wanted to keep on letting him shoot it. You know, there were some Suns fans complaining that he's one-dimensional, which he is, but that's the point. And that's the reason why we signed him, is to shoot threes as a power forward.
Yep.
And, you know, I don't have any issue with that because that's what I wanted him to do every single time he had it. I just wanted him to chuck it up there. I don't care. You know, I was
we
ready
watched
for it.
Channing Frye for how many years?
Yeah.
Why not Mirza?
And when, you know, Mirza did something that Channing Frye really didn't do, which was start to put the ball on the floor when he didn't have that three-point shot. And he got better at that as the season progressed and he had a couple of games where he really didn't make that many threes, but still had a high point total because he was getting to the rim. There were those dunks in that Sacramento game, which I didn't even know. I mean, I guess, of course he can probably dunk. He's 6'9", but didn't expect him to when he did it twice in the game, one off an alley-oop. His game has gone a lot better than just three-point shooting, and I really hope we bring him back.
I hope so too. Out of all of the free agents this year, he's definitely the guy I think we really need to bring back too. Okay, Mirza. We love Mirza and scoring off the bench like that. And Lure, the guy that we would not be excited about being our first option off the bench. He played 67 games for us this year. He scored 8.5 points per game, 5.5 boards. And when Lure was getting starts, he'd always seem to have a really nice first quarter and then kind of taper off for the rest of the game. I like Lure as a backup forward on the team for sure. He's very versatile as a power forward. He can match up against some centers, and he's athletic enough to match up with some small forwards too. Sometimes you get a little nervous when Johnny Badger has the ball in his hands. He just seems a little... Some nights he seems confident, some nights he doesn't, and you can kind of tell. What do you think about him, David?
You know, I really like John off the bench. I thought that he was pretty consistent when he played. There were stretches of second quarters where he was basically our only offense, where he was the only guy that scored. There was a Jazz game, there was another Jazz game, there were a couple other games where he was basically the guy that scored in the second quarter. And I think that consistency showed. I know there were times where he would taper off, but I don't think that was as much of him cooling off as he wasn't bailing us out on offense instead, and there were other guys taking shots. He shot pretty well percentage-wise. He hit 38% of his three-pointers. He hit 48 of his field goals altogether and went about 76 from the free throw line. I think that he's a really good energy big off the bench, whether it's being a small ball center or a power forward. I think that he can be good in either of those roles because he does have a bit of size to him. You know, he's not the best defender, but if you go on our NBA, the NBA's Reddit, there was that post about the all-average NBA team, and we had 2 guys on that, so can't complain too much about that. At least they're not awful; they're just average. Alex Len and John Lure, but that's kind of what I see John Lure as. He's just like, he's an average stretch big, basically, and I think that's good off the bench. I think you'd rather have an average guy like that than a below average guy pigeonholed into that role.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I think about Lure, I think he burned us a couple of games as a Grizzly. I remember those games. And then, so when we brought him in, when we traded for him, I was pretty excited to have him. And then we watched a Suns versus Kings preseason game where he flushed it on DeMarcus Cousins so hard. I was amazed. That dunk got made a lot of highlight reels that week of the preseason, and I was very hyped for John Lure after that. I didn't really know what to expect. My expectations were probably a little too lofty, but I like having Lure on the team, and that end of the bench might get a little crowded if we want our boy Big Sauce Allen Williams there. Let's talk about him a little bit. Didn't get a chance to play too much for us, but everybody loved it when he did. And like we've said before, he's a really good guy to have at the end of the bench. He keeps the excitement there. He loves being there. You can tell. Local Phoenix guy. Definitely happy to be a Sun. And this last game against the Clippers was great for him. That was a blast to watch. We could really got a chance to see what he could do. Any thoughts about Big Al?
Yeah, I really enjoyed him as a cheerleader off the bench. He doesn't have anything against the GOAT Bobby Sakura, but during the Clipper game when he was when he got that double-double, you could see that the other guys on the team really like him because everyone was on their feet. They were cheering him on as he was going at it, and I think that's good, and I think that he deserves a look at as maybe a 12th, 13th, 14th guy off the bench. Doesn't really play, but just comes in every once in a while when we need him to, if there's some injury stuff. Just because I think he's just a good bench presence as, he's got the excitement. He's a cheerleader, in quotes. But I really liked him, and I think that Clippers game, where going in I would have been like, okay, maybe you bring him back. He's a rookie. He's a local Phoenix guy. Get him a couple times on the D-League team, the Northern Arizona Suns, and, just try and see if he can become something. But now it's kind of like, yeah, definitely bring him back. Put him on the bench, put him at the end of the bench, play him every once in a while, and let him grow and see what happens.
Yep, totally agree. I think he deserves a spot here. I think he at least kept the spirits high towards the end of this season. And just based on character, he must be a hell of a guy. And you can tell everybody loves him. And we have him under contract for next year, so I hope he gets a chance. He played great in the Summer League last year. He played great overseas. So he has it in him. Maybe he is a little undersized, but he can still be beneficial to a team.
You know who else is undersized and gets rebounds and really doesn't score, but gets rebounds and does dirty work? A guy on the Cavs. He's got way too big of a contract because he's one of LeBron's guys, but Tristan Thompson is that undersized power forward guy that ends up getting stuck playing center and basically just does dirty work, gets rebounds, all that. Allen Williams, if we want to bring him along, maybe he is a guy that comes in and just gets rebounds and maybe some putbacks here or there. Doesn't have range, but is just one of those, another energy guy. And maybe we bring him along and see what he can be in a few years, but there's nothing wrong. You can never have enough energy guys, in my opinion.
Absolutely. And then another energy guy that we brought in this season, Chase Budinger. He's not a rah-rah get hyped guy, but he brings it when he's on the court. He plays great defense, in my opinion. He played 17 games for us this year. Didn't get a whole lot done, just 3 points and 2 boards per. But he really helped out. We were thin at that small forward spot after TJ went down for the year, and just having a solid small forward on the roster, another veteran presence, I think that really helped out. And he's got some spring in those legs. He's a great athlete. He plays great defense, and for the position he was in this season and in his career, I think he's a good guy to have on your bench too. What do you think?
Yeah, no, he's a bit of a journeyman. He played a lot with the Timberwolves, played a little bit with Houston, was on Indiana at the beginning of the season, but kind of got lost in the depth. If he is on this team with us, he's going to get lost in the depth. Because, we don't have a lot of it, but PJ and TJ Warren and possible draft pick, he's going to end up getting lost. I'm not sure if we really bring him back. Maybe we do for another season, but, he was a good energy guy off the bench. And as you said, grabbed rebounds, really didn't do a whole lot, but was just a small forward when we needed a small forward with TJ out. And, that's all you can really ask for him. We do run a lot of 3-guard lineups, but you still need a small forward. And that's what he was for us.
Absolutely. Another Arizona guy, he was a Wildcat, so I bet that influenced the decision of bringing him in a little bit, but
agreed.
Just a nice stopgap for the rest of the year for us. And, David, if you want to talk about Markieff, I guess this is the chance.
I mean, do I really want to? Probably not, but I'm just going to lament on how he decided to say screw you to us this season, and look at his percentages. 39% from the field, 28% from 3-point, and 71% from free throw. He was trying to give a big middle finger to the organization and the team, and he did it. And he brought up those percentages by quite a bit when he started playing in Washington, because he got what he wanted. But he's not in the playoffs, so darn, Markieff, what a better situation in Washington. And that's not knocking the Wizards. Well, that's not knocking the Wizards. That sounded like it, but maybe it is. Who cares? We suck. We can talk crap about other guys.
Why not?
Why not?
Why not?
I don't care. I'm not worried about karma.
Okay, so that covers all of the forwards and centers on the roster that ended the year with us, at least, except for Markieff. But I guess he's the necessary guy to talk about this season. So let's talk about next year a little bit. Out of these guys, what would you really like to see as a starting lineup? And if you think we're going to bring someone in or draft someone to fill that spot, just say it.
I definitely think that we're going to end up drafting someone. Probably a power forward, a small ball center. I definitely think that we're drafting it with one of those first 2 picks. Whether it be a Dragon Bender, whether it be Sabonis. I know that Mitch is always on him. I think that if Scal's available at that pick, I think you go Scal just because of his raw athletic ability and his unique skill. I know a lot of people don't necessarily agree with that, but whatever. There are a lot of power forwards, especially in that second half, that are worthy of a shot. I see us bringing one in. I don't know if they start right away. We've never really gone ahead and just started a guy right away. We brought him along during the season. So I think that we'll start PJ and Tyson at the 3 and 5 spots. I'm not sure about the 4. I could see us starting John Lure just to start the season and then maybe bringing along that draft pick. If we keep John Lure, of course. I think he's a restricted free agent, so if we give him an offer, tender, then we'll probably end up keeping him. And I think that that's kind of as we start. I think that's kind of how we look, and maybe bring along that whoever we pick up in the draft and try and bring them along to start, whoever that be. But I think that for sure locks, I think, are PJ and Tyson.
Okay, I differ just a little bit. I think that TJ Warren will be taking over the starting spot, and I know that that might hurt our defense a little bit out of that starting lineup. But if you think we all want Booker and Bledsoe at the guards next year, and I just think about Booker, Bledsoe, and Warren just scoring buckets all game, I get pretty excited about that, and I think it's time for TJ to take the responsibility and become a starter in this league. I think that'll help him. And I definitely agree that Chandler should be the starting center next year. I think Len could definitely flourish off the bench for 1 or 2 more years, really. He's still young. And that power forward spot, I have no idea who will the starter be next year. It could be a draft pick. It could be Lure. It could be Teletovic. Teletovic would, that's another defensive issue there if you're starting him at the 4. But, maybe we bring in a free agent. Maybe we draft a guy. I just have to leave that 4 blank for now, personally.
Yeah, and there is a reason why I said that TJ would probably come off the bench and PJ would start. That's because if you look at who would be coming off the bench, you still have to think of guys that can score for us. And so I think that PJ loses a lot of value. Tucker, saying PJ and TJ jumping back and forth is a pain in the ass. Tucker
It's tough.
Tucker coming off the bench really diminishes his value. And I think that, for at least another season, keeping Warren on the bench to at least start the season will help bring him along, get him back after the injury into the flow, and then kind of continue to groom him to be that starting 3.
Yeah, our opinions differ there, but I won't be mad at either one of those guys starting next year.
Hey,
love both of them.
If Warren starts, I'm okay with that completely. I'm just telling you my thought process. We're allowed to have different opinions.
Absolutely. All right. And then what about the bench? We'd have Len coming off for Chandler, obviously. And then, I guess really I'd want our bench to consist of a guy like Bogdanovich that could probably play some 3. And then probably some draft picks. I don't see... I like Lure and Teletovic off the bench, to tell you the truth. I'd rather see a different starter at the 4, but other than that, what do you think? Big sauce at the end of the bench, of course.
Big sauce at the end of the bench. I think that you go Len and hope that we bring back Teletovic and have those as the main 2 guys, and then have that draft pick as that 3rd spot. I think. Whether that, or draft pick or Lure, I guess you could say, if we bring back Lure. Because if you start the draft pick right away, then you're probably looking to bring Lure as another guy off the bench if we bring him back. But I think that for those other spots, you got to think at the 3. I think Warren's going to be that guy for at least the start of the season. So you're saying that your first 3 off the bench for those are Warren, Teletovic, and Len. And then you're looking at kind of going a little bit deeper into the bench for guys that are in the 11 and 12 roster spots. And, you could look at John Lure. You can look at that draft pick. You can look at you can look at a Bogdanovich to slot in at the 3 instead of a 2. There are a lot of places we can go. We kind of have a lot of guys on roster, even when you don't count the guys that are free agents. So you don't count Poledovich and Lure. So you say, okay, so TJ Warren, Alex Len, we've got Bogdanovich coming over that can play 3. We've got draft pick. We've got Alan Williams, who will be under contract. We've got, you start looking and we don't really have a whole lot of spots left. So, there could be moves, there could be not. It's tough to say because we're not the ones making the decisions.
Yeah, that's definitely true. As much as we wish it weren't that way.
Yeah.
But, I'm really confident with our bench unit next year, no matter who we start. If we start Bledsoe and Knight again, having Archie and Booker as the 2 guards, then Warren and Len, and then the toss-up for the 4 spot, that sounds like a pretty nice bench no matter what. Nice mix of defense and offense. So I'm not worried about our bench next year. I'm just worried about how we shore up that starting 4 spot.
Yeah, say those guys are off the bench, or say that, you go Knight, Goodwin, and then say we bring back Toledovich, so Toledovich is that 4 guy. That could turn on the burners on some teams. That could burn up other people's benches, and that's what you want. If you can have a bench that plays a little bit of defense and can turn on the Jets, you're in a good spot. That's what everyone wants.
Yep, I think that's we definitely have that to look forward to next year. And let's talk a little bit about the draft. We'll definitely be selecting a power forward. I think there's no way around that. I think we need a young power forward to bring up on this team. We don't really have anyone that fits that bill. So any guys that you'd be really interested in?
The closer everything gets, we might not be a top 3 pick, so maybe we don't end up with a Dragon Bender, or maybe we still do. I don't know. It seems like he's kind of that consensus 3 pick. Who knows? I mean, I would love to somehow win the lottery or get the 2 pick or something like that, but it's probably not going to happen. Yeah. So you look, Dragon Bender is a spot if we're ended up at that 3. If we're at the 4, maybe we don't end up with him. So maybe we look to get a power forward towards the end of the lottery. And there are a lot of guys there. There's Scal that's kind of projected to be there. Sabonis is projected to kind of be there. The guy from Michigan State, I can't remember his name, is projected to be there. Portal probably won't be there from Utah, but it's a possibility that he could be there, even though he's more of a center. There's a lot of guys at that spot, and I think that we could pick any one of those guys.
Yeah, and a guy that I'm starting to look into more is Henry Ellenson out of Marquette. He's a freshman this year. He declared for the draft, and he's been creeping up a little bit. I think some teams are becoming a little more sure about Bender and that contract situation he has. And, he's just a kid, really. He'd be one of the younger guys in the draft, I believe. But this Ellenson kid from Marquette, 6'10", he's 19 years old, pretty decent shooter. He's got a good frame. I could see us considering him at 4 all of a sudden. Maybe if Bender isn't that guy, I could see Ellenson being there.
Yeah, so I'm looking at just a mock draft right now. They have us still picking even at the 4 spot with Boston at the 3. Us picking Dragon Bender. I'm not the biggest fan of that. There are some other ones that say that Celtics pick him and we end up with picking Jaylen Brown, which, I think that he can be pretty good. But there's the Michigan State guys, Deontay Davis. That's the guy.
There you go.
I think that that is a pretty good shot of being that guy. There are a lot of people picking him at around that 13 range. Around 13 to 15. I want to watch a little bit more tape of him because I didn't get to watch Michigan State really when it came tournament time. I could see us picking. I think that, but from hearing about him, that could be that guy right there. As we said, maybe you look at Sabonis, maybe you don't. Bryce Johnson's the end of the first round guy who could be a bench for. But I think that looking into Deontay Davis or Scal are the two spots that I would look at. And I know Scal had a pretty bad freshman season. He probably needs to go back to school, but he's going to get drafted in the lottery. So you can't blame him for that. And I think if you look at those two guys, if you think that we don't pick Bender at the 4, I think that you could see a case for us picking either of those guys.
Yeah, with Scal's kind of interesting year at Kentucky, I don't really know what to make of the guy. Calipari pretty much made an excuse for him and said that he messed him up or something along those lines. So he's definitely an intriguing prospect, though. And, a few years under an NBA team and working with the same deal for a while, that could really help him out, and he could really turn into something nice. And with that late lottery pick, I trust McDonough.
Yeah, there are a couple of guys with a late lottery pick. I think if Bryce Johnson's there, some people, are saying maybe a Thon Maker, which who knows?
Yeah.
I could see that. That's a huge project, though. I definitely trust McDonough when it comes to that late in the draft. Whether there's that one Hernana Gomez or whatever his last name is, that's a foreign guy that is supposed to be picked in around that range. It's a small forward, power forward. But, I trust McDonough, and I think that he's going to pick the right guy at that spot.
Absolutely. Any last notes on the front court?
Nope, I got nothing.
Cool. Well, hey, everybody. That will do it for this week. Be sure to check us out on social media. Follow us on Twitter under the handle @SunnyInPHXPod. Find us on Facebook under the name Phoenix Suns Multiple Sources. Hit us up through email with questions or suggestions at sunnyinphxpod@gmail.com. Head over to the website multiplesources.net/Phoenix Suns and the entire Multiple Sources blog and podcast network. Thanks for listening. And by the way, we are looking for a new writer to join us. So if you're interested in getting your feet wet in the sports writing world, just send us an email and we'll be in touch with you. Be sure to keep listening through the summer. We are doing our season recap next week, and then we'll be hitting the draft pretty hard after that. So we'll see you all next week. Go Suns.